Welcome to Storycraft Portal, where real-life mysteries come alive. Today, we unravel the chilling true crime story of Cati Blauvelt, a young woman whose life was tragically cut short by the very person she once loved. Betrayal, deception, and a desperate run from justice. This case has it all. Imagine finding the love of your life, only to realize that the person you trust the most is the one planning your murder. A young woman in South Carolina, full of dreams, vanished without a trace, only for her body to be discovered in an abandoned house. The killer? Her own husband, a former soldier who would go to extreme lengths to escape justice. But the past always catches up. Cati Blauvelt was a 22-year-old woman full of life. She worked hard, had many friends, and always carried a bright smile. But behind her cheerful personality, her marriage was falling apart. Her husband, John Blauvelt, an Army recruiter, had a dark side. Their relationship had become toxic, filled with arguments and fear. One evening in October 2016, Cati left work but never made it home. Her friends and family grew worried when she stopped answering calls. Days passed with no sign of her. The police launched a search, but there were no immediate clues. Then, a horrifying discovery changed everything. In an abandoned house, Cati's lifeless body was found. She had been brutally murdered. The investigation began, and suspicion quickly fell on her estranged husband, John. But there was one big problem. John had disappeared. The manhunt had begun. As the news of Cati Blauvelt's murder spread, all eyes turned to her husband, John Blauvelt. He had a history of violent behavior, and their relationship had been strained for months. Witnesses recalled heated arguments and moments where Cati seemed scared of him. When police arrived at John's house, they found it empty. He was gone. His belongings, his car, and even his military-issued weapons were missing. Investigators dug deeper and discovered something shocking. John had fled with his new teenage girlfriend, Hannah Thompson. With no sign of John, authorities issued a nationwide manhunt. His face was plastered across news stations and online forums. People were warned that he was armed and dangerous. But despite all efforts, John had vanished without a trace. Time was running out, and the question remained, where was John Blauvelt? As police searched for John Blauvelt, small clues began to emerge. Security cameras captured his car, leaving town the night Cati disappeared. Witnesses later reported seeing him at a gas station, buying supplies and looking anxious. Investigators traced his movements and discovered he had driven across multiple states. His teenage girlfriend, Hannah Thompson, was still with him. Her family pleaded for her safe return, fearing she was in danger. Despite the nationwide search, John stayed one step ahead. He used cash, avoided cameras, and changed locations frequently. Authorities believed he was getting help from someone. But no matter how far he ran, the past was catching up. Then, a breakthrough came. John had been spotted in Oregon. Police rushed to follow the lead, but by the time they arrived, he was gone again. The chase was far from over. John Blauvelt knew the authorities were closing in, so he changed his appearance. He cut his hair, grew a beard, and started using fake names. Staying off the grid was his only chance to avoid capture. He and Hannah Thompson moved from town to town, living in cheap motels and avoiding attention. Hannah, once excited about their escape, now felt trapped. She had no contact with her family, no way out. But John controlled everything: the money, the plans, and most importantly, her. Meanwhile, investigators were tightening the net. They spoke to John's old friends, tracked his previous locations, and checked surveillance footage from motels and bus stations. Each clue brought them closer. Then, after months on the run, Hannah suddenly reappeared. She had escaped, and what she told the police changed everything. Hannah Thompson's sudden return shocked everyone. She had managed to slip away while John was asleep in a cheap motel. Frightened and exhausted, she found her way to a police station and told them everything. She revealed how John had manipulated her, keeping her isolated and in fear. He constantly moved them from place to place, never staying in one town too long. He paid only in cash and avoided cameras. making it nearly impossible to track him. But the most chilling part of her statement was this: John had been planning to disappear permanently. He talked about changing identities, crossing the border, and starting a new life. With Hannah's help, police finally had a real lead. They now knew his habits, his hiding spots, and his next possible move. The manhunt was about to intensify. With Hannah Thompson's testimony, the police had a fresh trail to follow. They now knew John Blauvelt was desperate, constantly moving, and possibly trying to flee the country. His last known location was traced to the Pacific Northwest. Authorities alerted Border Patrol, fearing he might attempt to cross into Canada. Meanwhile, undercover agents monitored bus stations, airports, and train terminals. They were getting closer. Then, a critical tip came in. Someone matching John's description had been seen in Medford, Oregon. He was staying at a small motel, using a fake name. Police rushed to the location surrounding the building, but when they kicked down the door, the room was empty. John had vanished again, leaving behind only a pile of cash and a burner phone. It was clear he knew they were coming. The chase was reaching its final stage. John Blauvelt was running out of options. He had managed to slip away once again, but the authorities were closing in fast. His face was everywhere, on the news, on wanted posters, and in every police database. He couldn't use his real name, he couldn't withdraw money, and he had no one left to trust. Desperate, he turned to an old military contact, hoping for help. He claimed he was being framed and needed a place to hide. But what John didn't know was that this person had already been contacted by the police. Instead of helping, they tipped off the authorities. The FBI now had a location. John was in a small cabin deep in the Oregon woods. This time, they wouldn't let him escape. A team of officers moved in, prepared for anything. The final confrontation was near. As dawn approached, law enforcement surrounded the remote cabin where John Blauvelt was hiding. Armed officers moved in silently, their weapons drawn. They had one goal: bring him in, dead or alive. Inside the cabin, John realized something was wrong. He peeked through a crack in the curtains and saw shadows moving outside. Panic set in. He grabbed a gun, knowing this might be his last stand, and a voice boomed through a megaphone. "John Blauvelt, come out with your hands up." Silence followed. Officers held their breath, waiting. Then, a gunshot rang out from inside the cabin. For a moment, no one moved. Had he shot himself? Or was he preparing for a firefight? The officers had no choice. They stormed the cabin, ready for whatever came next. The end was near. As officers stormed the cabin, they found John Blauvelt crouched behind an overturned table, gripping his gun. For a split second, it seemed like he might open fire. "Drop the weapon," an officer shouted. John hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. He knew he was surrounded. There was no escape this time. Slowly, he lowered the gun and raised his hands. The officers tackled him to the ground, securing his wrists in handcuffs. It was over. Outside, the sun had begun to rise. The man who had spent years running, hiding, and deceiving was finally in custody. News of his arrest spread quickly. Cati Blauvelt's family, who had waited so long for justice, finally had an answer. But one question remained. Would John ever confess to what he had done? John Blauvelt was extradited to South Carolina, where he faced trial for the brutal murder of Cati Blauvelt. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: witness testimonies, surveillance footage, and Hannah Thompson's statement. The jury didn't take long to reach a verdict. Guilty. Cati's family wept as the judge sentenced John to life in prison without parole. After years of fear and uncertainty, justice had finally been served. Outside the courtroom, Cati's loved one spoke to the press. "She was taken from us too soon, but today she gets the justice she deserved," her mother said, holding back tears. As John was led away in handcuffs, he didn't show remorse. But no matter what he felt, his fate was sealed. His years of running were over. Cati's story had come to an end, but her memory would live on forever.